Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reedy with Future Pastimes, and we are reading Dune. We are now on our 10th chapter, and it's a little bit of a longer chapter, and it's going to start with a commentary from Princess Irulan from Muad'Dib, Family Commentaries, talking about what Lady Jessica had to sustain her in a time of trials. And there's a Bene Gesserit proverb that any road followed precisely to its end leads precisely nowhere, and about climbing the mountain, because at the top of the mountain you cannot see the mountain. So it'll be interesting to see how that applies to this chapter, where Lady Jessica is exploring the house and she finds a door with an interesting pad instead of a handle, and it's the sort of pad that's normally keyed to a specific person, and she tries it out and it actually opens for her, and it leads her into an airlocked room inside the house where the temperature and the atmosphere and the humidity, and there's moisture in the air, and it's to preserve that because it is a wet planet conservatory. And it's filled with potted plants and trees and lots of flowers, and it's a little sanctuary within the Arakeen Keep, and also a tremendous expense in the amount of water it would take to maintain that, which Lady Jessica picks up on right away. She notices that the windows are filter glass that is changing the white sun that Arrakis orbits into more of a yellow light that is more welcoming and familiar and healthier for the vegetation in that room. And then she comes across a little plaque there by a fountain that is addressed to her. It's a little note that says, "To Lady Jessica, I hope this place gives you as much pleasure as it did for me." And then there's some other notes on there, and it's signed the Margot Lady Fenring. And Jessica remembers that Count Fenring was sort of the governor of Arrakis. Not really the governor of Arrakis, but he was an appointee there to oversee stuff while the Harkonnens were the fief rulers of Arrakis. And now, one of the first things that pops into her head is that, that she notices that it's clearly a Bene Gesserit connection, because she uses the phrase, "on that path lies danger," which is something that Bene Gesserits use as a coded phrase to identify each other to each other, and to let the other Bene Gesserit know that there's a hidden message somewhere. So she immediately realizes that Lady Fenring is a Bene Gesserit. And her next thought is that, Count Fenring married his Bene Gesserit concubine, which, of course, Duke Leto Atreides has not married his, which is the Lady Jessica. But then she's like, I got to find this message. So she's looking around. She's looking for maybe like a braille message on the back with raised bumps. It's not there, but she realizes that Thufir Hawat and his men have searched every inch of the house, and they may have moved this particular note, but then she realized it was kind of placed with this big frond hanging over it, and she checks underneath it, and the message is there. And the message from Lady Fenring is that the Atreides have a traitor in their midst, somebody high up. And also that the room that Shirley Paul will end up in was specifically designed to attract him, and that it's filled with traps, many of which are designed to be found, but one of which maybe not. And of course, we know from the last chapter that Paul also picked up on the fact that it was a perfect room for a teenage boy, and that it did have a deadly trap in it. And in fact, not long after Jessica reads this message, Paul comes running in, and he still has the Hunter-Seeker in his hand, and he drops it into water to ensure that it is disabled completely. And then they discuss what has just happened, and they confide in each other. So Paul tells Jessica that the Shut-Up Mapes has warned him that there's a traitor, and Jessica decides to trust Paul with the message from the Bene Gesserit that is corroborating. But Jessica says, the thing is, though, is that this may be designed just to tear us apart. There may not be a traitor after all, because they immediately begin speculating who could it be. it can't be Thufir. He's served the Atreides for 3 generations. Could it be Dr. Yueh? Well, he's not that high up of a lieutenant. Surely it can't be Duncan or Gurney, maybe a sub-lieutenant. But Jessica's like, the people delivering these messages that there's a traitor may certainly believe that it's true, but that doesn't mean that it is. So not long after that, one of Hawat's men comes by to make sure everyone's okay and says, you should stay here until we have searched the whole place again using sonic probes to make sure that everything is copacetic. And this is after Lady Jessica assures them that she believes it is a safe space. So she and Paul hang out there, and she advises Paul to tell his father the news that they've got, but also to remind him that it may not be true. It may just be to keep them all paranoid and suspicious of each other, which would also have a pretty terrible impact. Now, we as readers, we do know that Dr. Yueh is in fact the traitor, but it's really interesting that they know that there's the possibility of it, but they are really not sure who could possibly be the traitor. And the chapter ends with Jessica has been looking out the window and the sun has gone down, and she's looking at the stars, and she sees one twinkling and realizes that's not a star. It's a light on the shield wall, and it's blinking, and it's got to be some kind of message, but it's a code that she can't understand. And as she's scanning around the city, she realizes that there's probably somebody responding to that message. And so that reinforces in her mind, there probably is a traitor. And this may just be the Harkonnen and their agents communicating with each other. So it's interesting that you've got this sanctuary space within the house, but then it's spoiled immediately by the fact that there's a traitor, there are dangers in the house. They thought it was safe. Jessica tells Paul, I have reason to believe that this conservatory is safe. And Paul is like, we had reason to believe my bedroom was safe. So nothing is safe. You and I, after Hawat's men have scanned everything, you and I, with our Bene Gesserit training of observation, should go over everything again and see if we see anything that nobody else sees. So it really is an interesting dichotomy there, where they think it's a sanctuary, but they're reminded, maybe, but it's on Arrakis, which is one of the deadliest places in the Imperium, especially for the Atreides at this time. They don't really know who they can trust outside of their own household, and they may not be able to trust everybody inside of their household. So it's an interesting chapter. This is a chapter that hasn't really been part of any adaptation. Now, the miniseries did have a little bit of a version of it, but that they did not include Lady Fenring. So that whole element with the Bene Gesserit and the communication in there, that was not part of it. It's interesting that we are in the Villeneuve adaptation. We are getting our first time having Lady Fenring as a character, but we don't have that connection with Lady Jessica through this note that happened in the first movie, and there was no conservatory. We don't even know that one was filmed and then cut out. So it's not really a critical chapter. It's understandable that it was not included in any of the adaptations. But again, it's a nice detail. And like I said, they did have the conservatory in the miniseries. And in fact, it showed up again in the sequel, the Children of Dune miniseries. Again, Frank Herbert's writing, very interesting, very compelling. It's one of the things that I like most about it is that he jumps from POV to POV within a chapter. So we get Paul's thoughts, we get Lady Jessica's thoughts as they pertained to the moment at hand. So I appreciate that. And it's the sort of thing that none of the extended Dune universe books really do particularly well. So I guess they just kind of said, we're not really going to bother with that. But it was I think it's very instrumental to the world building of Dune and to really giving us that character development and the richness of the environment. So I appreciate it. It's one of the things I like most about Frank Herbert's writing style in this book and in all of his Dune books in particular. So let me know your thoughts on this one. It's It's a longer chapter after a short one with a lot of intensity. We got a little bit of the fallout, but the plot is thickening with the traitor, which is, I think, what's important about this chapter as well. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.